Okay, so in this video, I'm going to show you how to use question blocks to route respondents through an instrument or your survey. And to do that, we're gonna do that in Qualtrics. To start off, as you'll see here, I have Qualtrics open, and I'm already into my project or survey. And so to start off, a little bit about what blocks are. So we may have participated in a survey or seen a questionnaire or instrument or something like that, and it essentially is just a list of questions. And sometimes that's what instruments are like. Everybody gets asked the same questions. But sometimes you, the researcher, you want to follow up on questions, and depending on how someone answers one question, you might want to ask them a follow-up question, right after that. Or you might want to have them skip ahead a couple of questions. And so you may have seen these kinds of instruments in some places. Usually, like if it were a pen and paper version, it would say, if they answer yes to question 2, skip to question 7 or something like that. And so when we're using an online tool like Qualtrics, we do that by organizing our instrument into question blocks. And a block is really just a group of questions. Generally, it would be a group of questions that are related in some way. So for instance, all of the questions that you may have or items that you might have around a particular construct, those might go all into one block. That's one way that you can organize your survey. But this is less about how you organize your items, into sets or blocks or anything like that, and just more about how we use blocks to route respondents through the survey. So I'm going to walk through how we do that. So to start off, when you create a project or instrument in Qualtrics, by default, what you see is you get one question block, and usually it will load with just one question here. So to start off, what we're going to do is we're going to rename this question block and just call it block 1. Okay, so now I've renamed that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a block, and I'm going to rename this one block 2. And then I'm going to create a third block. We're going to call that block 3. Okay, and so now what I'm going to do is create just a new question in each block. And what I'm going to do is rename some questions so that we can really easily see how all of this works. So the text of the question is just going to be something to make it easier to understand later. So I'm just going to start off by writing this question. Okay, so that's what I've named this first question, just to make the text really simple to work with. Then I'm going to change this to say that if they select the first option, then they get routed to block 2, which they would do by default anyway. And then if they answer the second option, then they're routed to block number 3. And if they select this option, so instead of routed to a different block, we'll say routed out of the survey. Okay, so then what I'm going to do just really quickly is just rename this to, this is block 2, this is block 3. Okay, so now that we have our blocks named and we have text into one item right here that we're going to use to route respondents through the survey, what we can do is actually show how that works. So all of the routing and along with some other features are all done through survey flow, which you can find by going up here. And so what we need to do is we just click survey flow, and then you'll see what pops up here is sort of like a flow chart almost. And what you see here are the 3 blocks that we created, the 3 question blocks. So block 1, block 2, block 3. If you want to, you can rename anything here. You can move stuff around. You can add a new block below, anything like that. So that just shows the structure that we've created so far. And so let's go back to what we want to do, which is route someone through the survey depending on how they respond to the question in this first block. So to do that, what I need to do is go over here to add below. So we want something to come between block 1 and block 2. Like I said, this is sort of like a flow chart. So if you want anything to happen between blocks 1 and 2, because thinking through how the respondent is going to encounter the survey, so they're going to respond to block 1, and then if you want something to happen after that, before they move on to block 2 or 3, you need to put the element in here. So we're going to click add below, and you'll see that there are a lot of options that come up right here. Okay, what we're going to focus on right now is just this branch option here. And so what we do is we can say add a condition. So what we'll do here is this shows us the different sort of conditions that can be used to route someone through your survey. What we're going to look at is questions, since that's the most common way that you would do that. So basically what this means is, depending on how they answer a particular question, something's going to happen to them. When I say happen to them, they're going to see something else. So here, so this is question 1, which is the very first question in block 1. So that's what we want to pick. So that will say this is the question that routes the respondent through the instrument. And now let's say they respond to this. So then they go to block 2. Okay. And we'll say is selected is the option that we want. So for instance, you could say if you wanted to route someone to a different part of the survey, if they selected anything but this answer, you could go to this option here. Is displayed and is not displayed is something that we're not going to worry about here. So then what you can do is we'll just click OK. So that's the condition that will be used to route someone through. And then because the way that this runs right here, if we were to go back to the instrument, which I actually will do to show how this works. So I'm going to click preview, and it's going to show how the instrument looks to a respondent. So this is the first question that they would see. And then let's say I click block 2. Okay, that's fine. I can click on the next button and block 2 shows up. And then I go right to block 3, and then that's it. However, if I go back to preview, now let's say that I click this option, says if the respondent selects this option, they should be routed to block 3. Then I click next, but block 2 shows up. So the reason for that is because back here in the survey flow, block 2 is not below this branching element. So what we need to do is I just need to click move, and I can drag it up, and we'll see that it shows up right here. And then I'm going to do the same thing with block 3. And then what I can do is click save flow. Oops. And then if I click preview, if I click this, it just takes me to the end of the survey, which is what we wanted it to do. Because if you selected response number, let me do this again. Because if you select this one, then you go to the other blocks. If I were to select this one, however, it says that they are routed to block 3. That also takes me out. When I say takes me out, I mean exits me from the survey. And that is because back here, you'll see that I moved block 3 underneath the branch, which is not really what we want to do here, right? So I'm going to move block 3 back out. Then if I want to have a separate condition or a separate branch for block 3, what I'll do is I'll just move this down here, and I'll just add a condition, and I'll do essentially the same thing. So point it to question 1, which is the routing question. Then point it to this response. So this is if the respondent selects this option, then they're routed to block 3. And then I'll leave it with is selected. Now I need to actually move block 3 below the branch. Okay. And so what this shows is that when a respondent opens the survey, they're going to go to block 1 and they're going to see question 1. And then depending on what happens, they're going to go to a different place. So if they select the option that says that they get routed to block 2, then they'll go to block 2 here. Then if they select the option that says that they'll go to block 3, then you'll see that they get routed down here to block 3. And then if they select the other option, which is that they get routed to the end of the survey, what that means is that they didn't meet this condition and go to block 2. They didn't meet this condition and then go to block 3, and so that person will then just be exited from the survey. So I'll show how this works a couple of ways here with the preview. So if I click block 3, for instance, now, we can see that it actually takes us to block 3. So what this means is that the respondent skipped block 2, or we had the respondent skipped over block 2, because in the real world that would mean those questions are not relevant to that person anymore. And so that is how that works. Now, let's say, for instance, that we wanted to have so that only if they selected the option to get routed to block number 3, then they, let me start over. So let's say that if they selected the option that they go to block 2, then they go to block 2. But let's say that we want everybody to see block 3. What we can do is go to move, and instead of having block 3 underneath of our branch, we can move it back out here. Then what I can do is just delete this branch, confirm delete. Now I can save it. And then what we'll see is that if I click block 3, I go right to block 3, which is what we want. I'm going to click restart up here now. If I click block 2, then it takes me to block 2, and I can respond to block 2. Then it takes me to block 3, which is all what we want so far. However, now we'll see if they select this option, they are routed out of the survey. This respondent would still get taken to block 3, which is not what we want. So we'll go back into survey flow. And then what we can do is add below. We'll do a branch again. And then we will build this back out. So we're going to base the branching on a question, on this particular question, the routing question. And if they go out of the survey, if they select the option, it will take them out of the survey, and that is selected. So now we're going to set the condition, and now I'm going to click add a new element here below the branch, and then I'm just going to click end survey. So that means if they meet this condition, we just kick them out of the survey or take them to the end. And so now I'm going to click this, and let's go back to the preview and see what happens. So remember before, this question routed our respondents through the survey just how we wanted. So did this question right here. So what we're really interested in is what happens, or what we want to check, is what happens if they select this option right here. So if this is programmed correctly, then what that means is that the respondent will be taken straight to the end of the survey, which they have. And so that is briefly how you use blocking and the survey flow options within Qualtrics to route a respondent through the survey or through your instrument, depending on how they answer particular questions.